Okay, so welcome everyone. Today is Monday, and it's a beautiful Monday today, actually. This is the front end squad. I'm guessing you already know that since you're here. And so here's what we're going to do today. I want us to build on what we've learned so far today, but I want us to build on what we've learned so far today, in that I actually really want us to do something and create something. All right. So what I'm planning on doing, there are two things I was hoping to do today. And let's see how fast we can get through the first task, and then that will determine whether or not we can do the second one. So the first task that I have is for us, and I'm going to need at least 2 volunteers to actually build out a couple of components. They're going to be very simple form components, right? And they will submit to a backend. I'm going to build one first, try to knock that out very quickly in maybe 15 minutes, right? And then that will give us about 45 minutes to try to knock through a second one, for a couple of people to try to knock through a second one, right? With one person sharing the screen. Okay, I want us to get our hands dirty today. And then the second half of the class, if we get that done, I want us to expand our CSS knowledge, okay? And with that, I would want to actually try to implement a layout with CSS. That's the second objective, okay? So let's get at it. Let's do the first one very quickly. So what I'm going to do is, and let's come here, let's use Jira for this one. And let's look at the user story we have for creating a new course, right? Which is, as a facilitator, I want to create a course. So we're going to use this user story as a guide for what we're going to do here. And this is going to be a simple form I'm going to create that's going to have a course title, description, category, and subcategory. Okay, and it will submit to an endpoint called courses. All right, we'll get into that detail when we get there. But first, just going to create a new screen so that a facilitator can create a new course. Okay, I will do it as quickly as possible, but I also try to talk to it as quickly as possible. And I want you to take note of the steps. You don't have to go so crazy about the detail of exactly what I'm doing, but note more the steps to solving the problem, because you can, if you know the steps, then you can figure out the detail, right? And remember what I said in the last class, we talked about how you can break up a large problem into a very, very small set of problems. You break a large complex problem into smaller, simpler problems. You can break those smaller problems down even more. You keep breaking them down until you get to the smallest version of a problem. The analogy we used was the human body down to systems, to organs, tissues, right? So we're going to do something slightly similar here, but not to that level at all. It's nowhere near as complex as that, okay? And just to confirm, you can all hear me. Can I get a response? Well,
yeah.
Tracking?
Woot.
Okay, all right, great. All right, so let's get started. We're going to create a screen for, we're going to create a screen for a facilitator to create a new course. The requirements for that form are on the screen here. We need a course title, description, category, and subcategory. The category and subcategory are lists. They're select from a list, right? So we're going to also solve that. So let's come here and let's get started. So I'm going to just pull this over here. CD, oh, all right. So let's do this here, code. Instead of Visual Studio Code there, let's bring it over. All right, so I have Visual Studio Code here. All right. Can you see my screen?
Yep.
All right. So I have here, I'm going to create a second terminal so that I can run my Angular app in one. So ngs, oh, right. All right. And so I'm just going to do this here. So you can see both the code and the application at the same time. All right. And let's come here into our other terminal. Let's go git pull. Just make sure we're on the latest version of the code base already up to date. So first thing we need to do, because we need a form for facilitator to create a new course, right? So the first step for that is to create a component. So that's ng generate component, right? Course form, and we'll add it to the app module. So app and m app. That's the first step. Okay, that's created the component and registered it with our app. The next thing we need to do is to create a route for it. So we're going to have to open up our app routing module. That's right here. Okay, so we'll open up the app routing module and we're going to add a new route for our course form, right? So here we're going to say path / courses, right? New. Okay. And here I'm going to, okay, now I need to import course form component. Actually, let me see if this automatically sees it. Let's say course form component. I'm trying to see if I can get Visual Studio Code to do some of the work for me.
I'm sorry, I'm trying to find where you created the app routing model class.
I didn't create it. It comes with Angular.
Oh, my bad.
Right. All right, so here's what I need to do. This is called course form component. All right, so I need to import this manually. Import course form implement, right? From course form the component. Right. All right, and this does not match. Let's go to this course. Oh, sorry. I'm missing, which is supposed to be a component attribute. This is going to be course one component. All right. That's what was wrong. And at the end here, I don't need that semicolon. All right, so I created my component here. And let's see. I did have an error. Oh, I don't have an error here. No, this is failing. Let's run this again. So console, invalid configuration of route. That cannot start with a slash. Oh yeah, sorry. That's the error here. So you see how the console is useful. Because I noticed it was blank, it wasn't doing anything. So now Angular, the compiler didn't find any problem with the code, but the browser did. Okay. So when I noticed it was blank, I came to the console and I can see what the error is. And that was about here at the leading slash. All right, so here we're good now. And I can actually come to here, I can come to slash course, slash courses, slash new. All right, and I have course form works, which is the template of my component. Okay. All right. So first step. Now I'm going to come into my course form components, of course, to the template, which is the HTML, right? Which is this one. And so this is what is displayed here, course form works. So I'm going to clear this out, right? I'm going to create a heading 2, course details, right? And then here I'm going to create a form, right? Name is course details form, right? Now this is something that I haven't taught yet, but don't worry about it.
Sorry, just a quick question. Is the code that you're using on your GitHub right now?
No, I'm just writing it from scratch.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I'm just writing it, so it's not in GitHub. I'm writing it live.
Oh, okay. All right.
All right. So, and we want to submit to the create course, right? That's the event handler one for that. All right, so we have our form, so we have a div here. Now we're going to say label for equals title. Say title. Actually, let's make it course title. And then I'm going to create an input. The ID has to match the course title. It has to match it exactly. Name is course title, right? We put our two-way binding, ng model, right? Course title. and our placeholder. Now let me show you a formatting. I'm going to do a formatting best practice here for HTML, which is this. Line up the attributes so that it's not one long line. You put them on new lines. The placeholder equals course 10. Okay. And then here, so copy this, paste this, make this description.
So you did that strictly for legibility, right?
Yes, it's a best practice. Yeah, it makes it much easier to see what the attributes are rather than having to read and scroll the line.
Okay.
It doesn't affect how it runs at all.
Okay.
Description, and here, description. This is course dot description. That's a description field on the course object. Yeah, this is the placeholder. Let me just go here.
America, I think some people are on the corridor waiting.
Okay. All right. So description. Oh, what did I do? All right. So description. Right now, this one I'm going to make a text there. Right. And so which ones I want to do? Text area. Ah, come on. All right, so I have my my closing div. All right, and then we have category and subcategory, right? And it says select from a list. So here, okay, div. And then here, for the drop down select, and then select, right? ID equals category. Name, category, and then I'm going to say my ng model, so my two-way binding to ng model will be course category. And okay, and then here, I select my options here will be option, or nothing, right? Select a category. And then option ng4 equals let's category categories. going to duplicate this for subcategory. Let's copy that. It's that here. And I'm just going to add subcategory, here, this subcategory ID, subcategory name. I think I have everything. All right, and then here we need a div. And here we just want to put our button, right? That equals submit. Right? ID equals submit force button. And here, create force. Okay, so I'll save this now so that we'll see. All right, so we have an
I have
error
a
here.
question.
Yes.
How come the input for course title doesn't have a closing tag, but the text area and select or the others do?
Because inputs are tags that have no closing because they drop something on the screen. Text area doesn't just drop something on the screen. It actually also can contain text. Do you get what I mean? Whatever I type in here will be the content of the text area, right? Selects, you will see, contain options. And the options themselves have, this is how, so text select options can have a different value from what is displayed. So whatever is displayed is between the option tags, right? Versus the value that's what you select actually will represent. So for example, I can have a category, you know, electronics, and the value is 5. So for the user, what you see, if I showed a category 5 to the user, it's meaningless, right? Because you have to know what 5 is. But if I show category electronics, it means something to you. And in the system, electronics has ID 5. It means something in the system has ID 5, right? So there are HTML tags that have opening and closing tags, and there's some that don't. So tags like inputs have no closing tag. Image has no closing tag. You know, line break has no closing tag. Horizontal row has no closing tag. Those are usually tags that just drop something on the screen and cannot contain anything else.
Can I try to talk about how I understand it? I think the opening and closing tags, a lot of times tell the it's a way of showing that, okay, this is where a particular format starts, and this is where it ends. So if it's a word, let's say you type "hello world" and you want it to be a header, you use the H tag. So the opening tag shows, okay, this is where the content starts, and after here, this is where the content ends. So there's some things that don't start and end that way.
Yeah. So think of it.
An image. Yeah.
Yeah. So think of it this way. Tags can work like containers, right? They can work like containers, in which case you define like Wally said, the start and end of a tag, and that tag applies to what's inside it, right? Or a tag can drop an element on the screen. Now, there are tags that drop an element on the screen, but are actually also containers and can contain other elements. A tag like the select tag, for example, needs to have option tags inside of it, right? To do something. This option tag can actually also contain, like you can put in special characters, you can do more things within that option tag. You can put in icons and stuff like that, right? So it is by itself a container as well, right? The same thing with the text area tag. The contents of this text area could be HTML. It could be a lot of things. So think of the tags that have open and close kind of like containers, and then that helps you remember which tags can have open and close. Now, if you put a closing tag on a tag that doesn't need a closing tag, the system won't break. If I put a closing tag on this input, right? Now you see Visual Studio Code automatically is trying to close the div because it doesn't see input as having a closing tag. But if I force it, right? If I force it, it won't break the code. It just, the browsers will just ignore it. In HTML5, right, you don't even bother about closing. In HTML4, you would make them what they call a self-closing tag, and you would do that. Okay, but for now, with practice, you just remember which ones do and don't. And there are not many that don't have closing, so most tags we use have closing. There are very few that don't. Okay, all right, so let's move on. Right here, we have an error, of course, because we haven't declared anything in our component. So we have to come into our component. And this is our course form component. So first thing is we are referencing a course public property on our component because we're saying course.category and course.name, and that doesn't exist. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm actually going to create a new type for course, right? And I'm going to create it not in the course form, but at the app level so that it's available. I'm going to call this course.ts. I remember for declaring types, we just say export class course, and then we'll just say what the types we want are. So we want the title, and this is going to be a string, right? We want the description, this will be a string. We want the category ID, and let's do it this way, category ID, and we'll say this will be a number, okay? And we'll say subcategory ID, and this will be a number. Okay, these are the 4 fields I have. It will eventually have an ID from the database. So I'll say ID number. And we'll have date created. Date created will be a string, and date updated will be a string. Okay, so this is done. I created this type. Now I can come to my course component here, and I can say, I'm going to add a new course property that's public. And we'll say all right. And this initializes it to a new course. And let's see here if Angular is happy yet. Okay, so it says there's an error in the template. Let's see here. Okay. What's it complaining about here? That error occurs in the template. Okay, let me remove that. I added that. I will take this out because I haven't even explained what this is yet. So I'll take this out. Let's save this and let's see. What's going on here? Entry model. Okay. So the problem, I will solve this problem. We had this problem last week, and that means it's been reverted somehow. So let's look at our app module here. And we don't have our form module included here. So that's because it's been reverted. So let me do this. Imports. Okay. Let's see where it is. So import forms module from Angular hash forms. Okay. Okay. So now it's complaining about categories and subcategories. So this is fine. And that just means that I don't have properties called categories, right? We have subcategories. Just creating empty arrays here so that it's not complaining about that. And let's see what else is it complaining about. Okay, and then my course model here, I changed category ID. I changed, rather than course the category, I made it category ID. This is complaining about this. This is what I defined. Category underscore ID and subcategory underscore ID. So I'm going to make those changes very quickly. Category ID. Come on, really say something about something. And then something about this, I don't have create course. I don't have that method defined. So I come here, and I'm going to create the method called create course. Save that. All right, so that's saved now. So if I go to, and we have the green here, which means everything's fine. So if I go to /courses/new, and I have my form. Okay, now my form looks awful. So, but it works. So let's just do some styles on this. And this is going to go to the CSS for this, right? I'm going to say label. Display line block. New width 100 pixels. Let's see what this is like. Okay. Okay. No. 5 pixels, 0, and then okay. So that's it, a little more pixel. Okay. All right. And then the last thing. Okay, so I have my form here now. Close this. And let me pause here for any questions. Do you guys understand what I've done so far?
Understand the form you created, the component. As far as I understand it, is something that has the HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, loaded, as it were, in a folder. And they communicate with each other thanks to proper, what's the word now? Is it labeling? Well, yeah, it's the technical word.
Okay, but what part of this don't you understand? I'll make sure that.
So my weakness is really the Angular part. So the Angular tags like the ng, the attributes that start with ng are usually an issue for me. Let's see. That's really where it is. Everything else seems to be good old JavaScript.
Okay. Anyone else?
Yeah, my issue it is like, where do you put what? Like the drop down buttons. Is it CSS? Is it TS? Is it HTML? Like I'm trying to figure out which of them has what.
Okay.
Like
Okay. Okay. Anyone else? I'll address all of them. I just want to collect as many questions as possible so that I can address them, as I said. Anybody else? Okay, so let me address them. So in solving a problem, right? This particular problem, we created an Angular component for because we need a route. Like the problem we're trying to solve is to create a form where a user can put in the details of a course, right? So for that, we need a route, which you have to create in the Angular routing module, right? But for you to register that route needs a component to handle it. So you need to create a component to handle it. Now a component has 3 pieces, right? typically. It has the template for the component, which is the HTML. It has the styles for the component, which is CSS. And it has the component definition itself. What brings all those pieces together? And what gives the brains of the component? Now, your routes that you created will not accept a template, because a template is not JavaScript. It's HTML, right? It needs a JavaScript object to talk to, because it is going to pass on control to that JavaScript object. Okay. Also, HTML by its nature, by default, is dumb. It's a markup language. It has no capabilities beyond rendering information on the screen, right? To render on the screen, its capabilities are limited. Let me not say it has no capabilities, because it can submit a form, but it submits a form by the route actually changes. It can't submit a form under the hood quietly. Okay, and of course you have hyperlinks. Those are pretty much the extent of the interactions that you can perform with HTML. It's clicking on stuff and it's either taking stuff. Things like selects and inputs, those are HTML elements that provide some interactivity. But you as a developer can't change that behavior. You can't make it do what you want. JavaScript is what lets you do that. So you can use JavaScript to add brains to HTML. Use CSS to add beauty to HTML. You remember how this form looked before I added the styles? It was all jumbled up, not much to look at. If I come into the style sheet here and I remove all of these styles and I save that, that's what it looks like. It's bare. This is my form, right? That's not very pretty. Okay. If I come here and I put my styles back, much better. That is CSS. So CSS is cascading style sheet. So as far as where things are, the template, which is what elements to show on the screen, are in your templates, they're your HTML. How those elements look are in your CSS, right? What those elements do are in your JavaScript, then your TypeScript component definition. Does that make sense?
So it's possible to have like a functioning form, like without CSS or TS or any of like HTML can handle like a full functioning form without any of those additional elements.
It can, but it will have to submit the form to another server-side script, right? So you can create the form, but the form won't do anything. You have to create another script that the form will submit to, and that script will do something with the form. The form can't process itself. It can't check the data. It can't do anything by itself. HTML cannot do that. It will only present the form on the screen and you say where it should submit to. That's as far as it can go. Okay?
HTML is basically glorified text.
HTML was designed to create documents. That's why it's called an HTML document. It's not a programming language. It's a markup language. It's for designing documents. Okay? So in an Angular world, HTML by itself is nothing. I could do this without the HTML piece. I could make this form without the HTML piece.
Yeah, that exactly is my problem. Like, why do we need it? Like, it seems redundant. Like, if every other thing we do, like, we could like.
I'll tell you. Yeah. Go on. Sorry.
I'm done. It's okay.
Okay. So I'll tell you why you need it. It's about good design. It's about being able to manage the code. Right here in the component, you see the important thing in an Angular world is this component. You don't need the CSS file either. Your stuff is just going to look like crap, right? But it will work. It will look awful. No one's going to use it because it looks awful, right? But it will work. You can get rid of these styles and not have any styles in there, like so. And you have that. If you get rid of the styles for this, it will look even worse, right? But it will be functional.
That makes so much sense.
Right. It will be functional. So if let me show you. You see this navbar? You recognize it. You look at it. It looks like a navbar, right? You know why it looks like a navbar? Because there are styles in the navbar component to make it look like a navbar. All these styles here, I take them out and I save. It still works. It's still a navbar, but it doesn't look like a navbar, right? That's what it looks like without styles.
Now I'm confused because that still looks good.
It still looks good. Did you say it still looks good?
It does.
Well,
It does.
but is it a navbar? Would you call it a navbar or would you call it a set of links? No, now the form, no, I haven't removed the styles for the form. I'm talking about this upper section. That's the part.
Yeah, my question is like, why HTML? And you deleted the template. And
I
it
didn't.
looks like
I didn't delete the template. I deleted the styles. I'm showing you what this looks like without styles, without CSS. So this is what it looks like without CSS.
no, I'm not asking about CSS. I'm actually about HTML.
Okay. All right. So let me show you why you have the template in a separate file. If this template wasn't in a separate file, what you'd have to do, you still have to write HTML. Don't get it mixed up. You always have to write HTML because that's the only way you get elements on the screen, right? If you don't want to have an HTML file, this is how your component file would look. So let's come to our component definition here. Rather than template URL here, right? You would have this is what it would look like. Sorry. Here. This is what it would look like, right? You still have to write the HTML. You see, it looks exactly the same, even though I've commented out this my template URL line. Where is it? This line. I can delete this line, and it looks exactly the same. But you'd have to write your template in the TypeScript file, which is not good practice at all, because this is very hard to maintain. If you don't want to use a template, you know what you're going to need to do to create an input? You're going to have to manually create DOM nodes in JavaScript, which is, I don't even know how to explain it. I'm not going to go down that path. Let's just say it's not something you do. Right? It is possible, but it's not something you do. Nobody, if you do that, like, you don't know what you're doing. Pretty much, that's what it is.
The best explanation I got is it's possible, but it's not something you do.
Right, right. I mean, like, you can walk from here, right, to Argentina. Okay, Unless you're on a specific mission to make a specific statement, why would you do that? That's equivalent. That's equivalent. HTML.
It's like making your life more difficult just for no reason.
Right, right. And it's difficult to a point where it's almost, you can't even manage your life. Right? The slightest change you have to make is going to be a real pain to make. So HTML is important for creating templates, but it's called a template because it is not the final result. It's just a template. And the reason it's not the final result is because Angular modifies that template, which is where the Angular attributes come into play, right? So you have attributes like the ng4 that we use here. This dynamically creates options from an array. So if we look at this right now, when we have the select, that's the only thing we have. If I add a category to my categories array, I'm going to close this CSS so I have more stuff on the screen. So if I come here, you see my categories array is empty. If I come here and I create an object here with a name, actually I have ID and name, right? So ID, and I make this one name, and this will be a string category 1, right? If I save this, I now have category 1 here because Angular has now dynamically added this based on the template. So the final HTML you actually get is not the same as what's in your template because Angular will modify it, which is what Angular does. It's called dynamic HTML. Okay. In the past, there used to be a term called DHTML. And so if you were going for a job interview, you would say you knew HTML and you knew DHTML. So those who knew DHTML, you're automatically harder because that means you can go beyond just static HTML. You can use JavaScript to generate HTML, right? So if I came here and I added a second category, I'm going to add 2 more here, right? And I'm going to just change these so that they're 2 and 3, right? And I'll make this 2 and 3. Okay. I've saved that. If I come here now, I have category 1, 2, 3, based on my array. And it's the same order as this array. If I came here and I moved 1 down, let's say I move 1 here, move 1 here. So I have 2, 1, 3. And I save this. Look, 2, 1, 3. This is generated by Angular, but it is generated using my template. This here is a template for my options. I'm saying loop through that array and for each item in it, create an option with this pattern. Now, if we inspect this element, there you actually see what's going on, or what you actually see what Angular generates. So this is the select I'm looking at. Look, I have an option, right? I have this option. You see the value 2, and the text in there is category 2. This option value 1, text in there is category 1. This option value 3, text in there is category 3. But look at my HTML template. I have only 1. So Angular created 3 from this one template.
So The question is why did we create them on Angular and not in HTML? Why couldn't we just create 3 categories in HTML if you wanted to?
So what happens if they decide to add a 4th category?
Who decides? The client or
no, the
or
admin. So think about it. Think about it. If you were running a school, right?
Yes.
And you're offering courses, and
Yes.
today you have catering and photography.
Yes.
Those are the 2 categories you have. On Thursday, you want to add a category called engineering.
Okay.
What would you do? You go into an admin tool, right? And create a new category called engineering, right?
Yes.
Okay. But if your front end, if your application cannot fetch that new category that you created in the tool, what's going to happen? You have to get a developer and say, hey, come change the code and add.
I see what you're saying. So
Life doesn't work like that.
Okay.
So these categories, so these categories would come from a database of categories.
Gotcha.
That's why it's dynamic.
I see. So things like that shouldn't be the template. They should be something that somebody can add after the fact.
They should be data. So
they should be data.
These applications are data driven.
Data. That makes sense.
You separate data from the presentation of the
presentation.
Data. Yeah. Right. So you write templates. Rookie used a term a few weeks ago. She asked about hard coded. You don't hard code stuff.
Gotcha. So that's select button is now your content. It's your template to show that okay, whatever data you put in here, this is how it will be.
Yes.
Then you now put the data. Okay, that makes sense.
Okay. So that data would come from a database, right? And there'll be a backend service that serves
why I
that
was
data.
Confused was because of the request.
Sorry, was because of the request?
Was the request response model. Like I felt like the HTML, because he had the template and everything, was going to be on the response side of that equation.
It's
like because like if now this the last thing you just said explained that better. Yeah. Because I thought like if a component call it, you have to go back to the template and then pull it out. But what you just said explained that better.
Right. So you have to remember that everything Angular, the component, the template, the style sheets, the services, all of that, they're all client side. So they're all part of the request side of things. They're not part of the response side.
That makes so much sense.
All of this is everything we're doing in the front end squad is all on the request side of the model, not part of the response side at all. What the people in the backend squad are doing on the response side of the model, not on the request side. Okay, so the backend is the response, the front end is the request. Everything here is so that a browser can make a good request. Okay, so here's what's happened now is I've created this form, right? I've created my two-way bindings to the component so that the component can request a server create this data in the database. All of this work is just so that the user can get this new course into the database, right? So I have the template that gives the user an interface to enter the course information. And then I have the TypeScript, the component definition, that actually will be used to package that information to send it to a backend to a server, and then handle the response from the server. If the server says, hey, I created this course successfully, then the front end can show the user, all good, your course was created. But if the server says, sorry, this course already exists, I can't create a duplicate, or if it says, the information you submitted is bad, I can't create this course, the front end that you create can give the user feedback and say, hey, an error occurred, right? You need to change this, or this is a duplicate course. The course already exists. You've probably seen that when you try to sign up to a site you've already signed up on and says, hey, that email address is already in use. The server provided that response, and the front-end app took that response and just presented it to you, the user. So this is all about providing a good interface to the user. All right. Is it coming together? Hello? Anyone?
Yes, it is. It's great.
Okay. All right. So
I just had a quick question.
Yes.
So this might be a little bit off topic, but what is the difference between what you can do with Angular and another framework like Vue.js? Because I've worked with Vue.js before, and they look like they do similar things, just different syntax.
Yes.
So,
yes. So they're all front-end JavaScript frameworks. So there's Angular, which is in TypeScript now. It was originally AngularJS. There's Vue.js, there's Ember.js, there's React, right? There's Ext.js. There's a whole bunch of front-end frameworks. They do the same thing. They're dynamic HTML frameworks, essentially. They dynamically render applications and provide a framework for front-end developers to build apps in JavaScript. Right.
so essentially, the only difference is just the syntax.
The syntax. There are others. There are also philosophical differences in what they do. Right. For example, Angular was the first to go towards creating custom HTML elements. Right. And that has become more popular, but that was with AngularJS, the concept of a directive. And even now in Angular, every component you create has a custom selector. So I could use this form here, right? I could come in, you see this same form right here? I can actually come into, let's look at our sign up. And if I come to the sign up HTML here, I could take the selector, which is app course form, right? I could use it like an HTML tag. And you're going to see what happens. So this is what sign up looks like. This is sign up without anything, right? If I come after the form here and I do this, app course form, and I close that, and I save this. See what happens? This
That is so cool.
That
is so cool.
Because in Angular, it's a new custom HTML element, right?
Oh, now I see what we're doing.
Right. So you see how easy this is, which is
basically
why,
like its own object.
yes,
And you just create it.
yes. So you think of components. When you think of components, think of them like widgets. They're designed to be reusable, right? They're also designed to essentially modularize your application, right? Rather than, so in the days of jQuery, which is another JavaScript framework, right? And before jQuery, when it was pure, you would write a long JavaScript file. It will have thousands of lines of code that does everything you can do in your application, right? Everything will be in one file. It was very difficult to manage, impossible to test. Now the JavaScript frameworks have come and broken that up so that you can create essentially widgets where all the capabilities of that widget are in its own folder, which is why you have this structure. So right now, for example, we created our course form. Look, with its custom HTML, if I copied this, right, and I place that there, what do you think is going to happen? I'm going to have two course forms. If I come here and I put one between the H1, between the heading, I put it there, what's going to happen? You have one up there. So it's essentially a widget that you can put anywhere. But you know what? All its brains, all its capabilities, what you can do is all defined inside here, which is how you implement things like pagination or photo galleries or, okay.
So not only do you have the HTML bits, not only do you have the template bits as part of the widget is like a complete package with the styling and the functionality.
Everything.
That's
yes.
crazy.
Yes.
That's crazy.
Let's do this. Let's do another exercise. I'll leave this course form, but we're going to do another exercise, and we're going to use a source of data, because I think it will help us understand better if we look at the data-driven nature of developing in Angular. You always have to think about data driving your final representation rather than hard coding stuff. So let's do an exercise. And this is something that you should, like, everyone should be able to practice, because we're going to use the backend that's out there and open, right? And we're going to use it to solve this. All right. So if we come here, let me see, I had this open somewhere because I was, okay. So we're going to use this JSON placeholder. And if you look at this, let's see, users, let's see what we have for users, right? Okay, users gives us 10 people, okay? Let's use this to create essentially a users directory, all right? Are you guys up for that?
Why not? Right?
Okay, let's create a users directory. Let's create a users directory, and then I'm going to show you some really cool things. And I'm going to try to keep it within the scope of what we've learned. All right, so first thing we're going to do is we're going to create a new component, right? And we're going to call it user directory. Okay, so let's come here. We're going to say nggc, that's ng generate component. That's the shortcut for it, right? User directory, right? And we're going to add it to the app module. Okay, that's generated our new user component. We need to add routing for it, so we're going to create a new route. So let's look for the app routing module here, and we're going to create a new route object. Remember this?
Can you do a quick refresher on routes and paths?
Essentially, routes in your browser. So when I say route, like literally that. Okay. So I want
the sign up part is the route, right?
Yes.
Okay.
So right now I want to be able to do this. This is what I want to do is I want to be able to come here and say / user directory. Okay.
It's almost like a link to a page or a component.
Exactly. Exactly. So it's like a new page, right? So right now I don't have a user directory route, so nothing happened. It just kicked me back to the home page, right? So, but I am going to come here and I'm going to create that route. So I've created the component already. So I'm going to create that route and bind it to the component, or make the component the route handler. So user directory, right? Or let's just say users. Whatever I specify as the path is what it is. And then I'll give it a component, right? And user directory component. All right. And I'll save that. Now, of course, Visual Studio Code automatically did the import for me, which is perfect. Okay, so I've created that now, which means here I can now come to /users, and I now have the route. Now you can see that the template for the route is rendered. Okay.
Sorry to, but this particular document, the app routing module, that is Node. It's a module.
No, it's an Angular module. This is Angular. TypeScript, everything you're doing here is Angular. Forget Node. The only thing that's Node about it is your development environment, right? You're not writing any Node code. This is Angular, and this is TypeScript, yes. So it's an Angular module. Okay. Our app that we're working on is an Angular module, app.module.ts. This is what defines the app we're working on right now. So when you started the project, you created a new app.
Oh, sorry. So it's Angular that is modules, and then Node is packages.
Node is modules too.
Oh, okay.
It's modules. Just don't mix them up.
Okay, sorry about that.
Yeah, but a module.
When you say talking about routes, I just think of server side stuff.
You need routes in your browser. When you go to look, any website you go to, the home page is the root route, is the default route. Beyond that, you always have routes. You have a slash, that's a route, right? /app, /sign-in, that's a route. So // these are routes. And then there are route parameters and stuff. We haven't done that on the Angular side. But a route is a route is a route, is an address to something, right? So if you have an app with more than one page, you need a route to the other pages you want to get to. Okay, all right, so let's go on with this. I want to be able to jump into this very quickly. And then this is something, like I said, that you can practice after. So we've created our user directory component, right? And we bound it to that route. So the route is now resolving to the component. And you can confirm it's resolving to the component because it's telling us user-directory works. This is just Angular's way of letting you know that, okay, the route is set up and you're good. If you come into the template, this text here is coming from our user directory template. So if we come down here, let's look for it. So, sign up. Where is this? Okay, I need to refresh this. That's good. So user directory, the user directory template is where that text is coming from. Whatever you put here is what's going to show. I'm going to delete it now, and when I save, it's gone. All right. Now, first step here, we need to get this data from this endpoint, right? This is a server. This is a backend that's delivering this data. Okay, similar to what the backend squad is working on. They're going to create endpoints like this that deliver data. If you've been part of the backend squad, you've seen this already. We already did this for people, right? Remember? So we're going to take this address. That's the address that we need. But to get the data from the backend, if you remember from the last class, we have to create a service. Does anyone remember that? You have to create an Angular service.
Like an API?
No, not an API. Remember, a service uses the injectable declarator. So there is a component. So Angular has many different building blocks. You can create components. You can create modules, right? So modules are like, essentially your entire app is a module, right? If we wanted to have like a separate admin side of this application, for example, we'll create an admin module. That'd be like its own app with its own routing. Okay, then you can have components. Components are the views. They're what the user interacts with. Okay, services are an invisible part. They have no templates. But services are where you connect with external resources. Services also help you share data between components, right? For example, when a user logs into an application, you want that user to be available to every single component, right? What are you going to do? You're not going to constantly fetch that user from the backend. You save that user on a service, and every component that uses that service will have access to that user data. Does that make sense? You also use services for common logic, right? For common logic. If you're calculating interest in
Basically, so you don't have to keep making calls back to your database and whatnot, so you can have that user saved in the application. So
exactly.
it's like saving states, kind of.
Yes, so services implement the singleton pattern, right? So services are great for saving state between views, between route changes, between components. All right, so let's jump in. So right now, because we need to interact with the backend and fetch this data, that is one operation that you use a service for because it's invisible to the user. Limit your use of a component to logic that interacts with the template. You get what I mean? So what we will do is we'll use the service to fetch data from the server and pass that data to the component. And then the component will use the template to render that data. All right. So the layer that talks to the backend server, we use a service for. The component talks to the template. It's always bound to the template. All right, so let's do that. So we're going to create a service, ngGS, so for ng generate service, right? And we're going to call it users, right? And there's no need to add it to a module. Services are direct injected. So now we have our service called users. So let's open up our users service, which would be down here somewhere, users.service.ts. It's not showing up yet. Let's refresh this. All right, let's see it here. So this is our user service, okay? I'm gonna do this very quickly. Oh, sorry, this isn't being. So I'm gonna import HTTP client, which is the Angular module for making HTTP requests, right? From that Angular /HTTP, right? I've imported that. I remember that now that's Angular service. This is actually an Angular service and it's injectable. So I'm going to inject it here. Remember the syntax is to declare a private variable and do that to define. All right, so that makes it available. And I'm going to create a method on this service called get users. Okay, and I'm going to say return ftp.get, right? I'm going to paste that URL there. All right, so what is, oh, sorry, I declared this in the wrong place, not in the construction. So this here. That's a new method. All right, and this is supposed to be this, but HTTP. All right. So, believe it or not, I'm all set up to pull this data from this endpoint. That's all I need to pull that data. Now, I need to make my component. Let's come back here. I'm going to open this up so that we can see that it's running okay. So I'm here on my.
Automatically save the data to an array.
No.
Or do you have to create? You would have to create that yourself, and then okay.
Yes. So let's jump into that. So now I created my service and I've created a method on it to fetch the data. Let's come back to my users directory component here. I'll come to the component file, right? The first thing I need to do is here, I need to get my user service, right? It's called user service. So it's an injectable. Look at that decorator, injectable, which means I can direct inject it into my constructor. So I'm going to say private user service, user service. I spell this one. Users service. Okay. VS Code has imported it for me here. So I now have a private property of user service that is that service I created. Okay. So in my ng on init, which is what is called when the template is done compiling, I'm going to say this dot users service. Come on. Right? The get users. Okay. Now, I explained subscribe briefly, but I'll explain it again once I finish writing this. So the response from that API call is passed as data to our first callback. So I'm going to say users. Okay. And then here's an error handler. And for this one, actually, let me just make this easy. This get error. And here, I'm just going to create a Boolean here called errors. And then users and the ME. That's an array of anything. Okay. And then here, let me actually make this simpler. Make this simpler. This dot users equals users. All right, this one. Okay. Let's say N. That's because my response, my service is not typed. Look at this. Let's inspect our page right now and let's see what's going on here. We come here to the console. Hold on. No provider for HTTP client. Okay, I need to probably add this add module. So, similar to how we had to have the forms module. Let's do this here. Import HTTP module from here. Let's see this, and let's see if that solves our problem here. Okay, so that solves our problem. Yeah. All right, so let's come back here now and let's go to our slash users again. And let's see. I don't know if you can see this request going out here. You see this request, this get request here. Going to JSON placeholders, and if we look at it, we get our 10 users back. So our application is now actually requesting that data. So we plugged it up and set it up to now request that data. And that shows up in our network here. Okay. This data we're talking about is this. So you see the first one is Leanne Graham. Because we've requested this data, and it is now in our, in our component, we can actually set up our templates to actually display that data. So let's do this. We're going to make this an H2, call this users directory, right? And then here we're going to create an unordered list, right? Or actually, let's create a table. Right? And here, head, a table row, right? Let's see what.
So you have to create a table from scratch?
Yeah, you have. I mean, where is it going to come from?
I thought you could like also generate a table from the data.
I will generate a table from the data, but I have to provide a template, right?
Oh, template. Okay, template.
Yes. So I have to create a template for the table. So name, username, email. All right. So here we're going to say name, right? Sorry. So we're creating a table, so we need table headers. So ch name, right? And then here we can now say, let's just copy that and paste 2, 3, 4. I'll just put this username, make this email. Let us see, hopefully we have a date field somewhere, but we don't. And we'll say company. Let's do this. Right? So that gives us our table header. And if we save this, you'll see that here. That's our table. And let's just add some styles for our table here. And just to make it small. Table, and then say width 100%. All right, that's better. And for our TH, say text align. Text align left. All right. So that starts to look better. Right. So back to our template. We now want to have the rows, right? This is our data-driven table now. So rows. So this is going to be in the T body, right? TR, NG4. Let user okay. Now we have our TD. You see that? That's the names of all our users. So we can copy this and use it to generate 2, 3, 4. So the next field here. And we're using the fields here for the next fields that we need here. So we have name, username, email. and then we're going with the company name. So name, here, username, email, company dot name, because company is an object. See that? And it has a name field. Okay, so if I save this, now have our table. We can do some styling of this. And I'll pause at the styling so we can talk about this. So let's do some styling. Let's make the header stand up a little better. So let's make our color, right? Okay, so make the color white. Let me use text, not text. So white, background color. Yeah, so you wanted dark brown, right?
That works.
I don't know if dark brown is the color. Brown. Yeah, let's go brown. Okay. Padding.
Just so you know, this is the class I've been waiting for.
All right. So, and then now let's go. And this is our TH. All right. So now we'll do our TD. Right. And let's just set the padding to 2 pixels vertically, 5 pixels horizontally as well. Right. Border bottom. Sorry, border bottom. Come on. Make this 1 pixel solid and gray. Okay. And then we're going to do, for the last line item, we don't want a border, right? So we're going to do last child. Last child here. Let me say border bottom none. Okay. And then last thing we want to do is we want to alternate the rows. So let's say and child, right? Even. We say background color. Let me use that. All right. Here's our table. Oh, no, sorry. This nth child, we don't want
meant to alternate the rows, right?
Yeah. The rows, not the columns. It's alternating the column. So let's do a TR here.
Okay.
And these two, because we want these styles actually here. All of these we want to be on our row, not on the cells. So TD is the cell there. I don't have the individual cells. All right. Looks better, right?
Yep.
Let's see. All right. So, yeah. So here we go with our table. Now, what if we wanted to click on this, right? And display, or actually, let's do this. if we look at the details, we have address, right? And we have company details. Okay. Let's add 2 buttons that will show us those information. So we come back to our template. And I want to use this to illustrate a little more of the interaction with the component. So you think about it, you want to have a button that when you click, it shows, you know, like a user card, right, with the details of their, with the details of their address and their company, right, and their phone number and everything. Okay, that's all we want to do. We want to show a user card. Okay, so I'm going to make it simple here. Is we're going to add a button to the right. So we're going to add an empty cell to the right here. We'll add a TH here. And this is a trick, just add a cell. Let's add an empty cell. You can see right there, there's nothing in there, right? And then here, for each one here, we're going to add another T. We're going to add a TD as well. TD, which will now give us for each row. And so inside this TD here, we're going to add a button, type equals button, right? And when this button is clicked, right, we want it to show user details. We need to call that function with user. Okay. And then we'll just give this text detail. So we have that button there, right? Now we don't have that function yet in our component, so we need to add that method to our component. Let's come to our component here, which is our users directory component, the TS here. We're going to create that method called show user details, right? And this accepts a parameter, which is a user. Okay. And if we save this, okay, we're green here, which is good. And just to test it here, let's just do a console log. Console.log user here, so that you see that when you call it, it actually is getting the user that you click on. So if we come to the console here, if I click on this, that's the user that I clicked on. Let's click on whatever that third one is. Okay, so you see that our call into this method is sending us the right user. And so what we're going to do here is we're just going to say this dot active user equals user, right? And then this dot user details visible equals true. Okay, so let's create those properties because you can see they're underlined because I don't have them yet. So active user, any, right? And then user details visible equals false. Okay, so that takes care of these two properties. What I'm doing, let me tell you the thought process. I want to make a panel that displays over everything, right? Like a box that displays, that shows like a user card. Okay, but I only want it to show up when the button is clicked. And then we can actually let's create a method for close user details, right? And what we'll do is we'll just make it set this dot user details visible false. Does that make sense? And then delete, or no, this dot active user. Okay, so that way it clears the active user and it sets the visibility of the panel to false. Okay, let us come here and let us create that panel. And this is, I know this is like drinking from a fire hose, but I want to use this to illustrate how I want to use this to illustrate really how the data-driven concept works. So we have our table here. We're going to come down here. We're going to create a div. We're going to call it user details. Okay. And then here, we're just going to say div, and here we have, we're going to do something like label, right? Name, and span, active user, that name.
Check your spelling.
Check my what?
The spelling of name, is that correct? Is that deliberate?
No, it's not. It's still not deliberate. All right, so I have my span here. All right, and then let me just use this to I'm going to create all this. So name, username, and then email. So email, and I think on the phone. Okay, and then what else do we have for data? So let me open this here. Reference the data. Users. All right, so we have home, website. Okay. And here we do website, and then company. All right. And this is actually user that's company, name, and then what's the other part of company? Catchphrase. User the company, the catchphrase. Right. Okay. And then here we say div user.company VS. And here, I'll just say I'll give this an ID, user company, just so that we can style it differently. All right, and then the last bit is address. Let's put that on there. Div ID, the address, right? And let's do this. Address. Come on. We do this. Div user.address.street, right? So street, city, zip code. Street, city, zip code. All right. Okay, so let's see how this looks now. I'm clean up here. I'm clean up here. All right. If I save this now here, ooh, I have a problem. Oh yeah. It's supposed to be active user. Am I missing that anywhere else? No? I'm still missing it somewhere. You said the address is zip code. No. Okay, no. There. I'm missing a template tag here. User, the company, the VS. That's in the filter here. I am still missing something. What did I break? Okay. So after my table here, this div close. Well, then I'm trying to see what's going on here. This is okay. All right, here. Canary property name of undefined. Canary property name of undefined. Oh yeah, yeah. That's because I don't have an active user yet. All right. So here we're going to do this. And we're going to make this conditional. So right now it's displaying all the time whether or not we have an active user. Remember, active user is only set let's close this. Let's start a component. So remember, active user is only set when you click on the button, right? Initially, it's not set to anything. So we're getting that error because we're trying to display the information for active user automatically when there's no active user. So we can add a conditional here. We're going to say ng if active user and user details. What did we call it? This one, user details visible. The user details visible. You guys remember this is a and, this is a Boolean and, so both have to be true for this to show. So if I save this now, okay, the bug we were having goes away. And if I click on this, it's now visible. All right, so in this div, let's do this here. Let's add an H3 here. Say user details for, let's just do this. Active user name, right? So that the heading is that user's name. Yeah, right there. Okay, and then here, let's create a button to close the type equals button, right? And click, close user details, right? And it's just going to be an X. All right, and let's test that and see if it works. If we open this, I'll click on that, it's done. All right, this is looking great. Okay, last bit. Let's see if we can make this look better in 3 minutes or 5 minutes. So the last bit now is, this is our user details. Let's do some styles for it. First thing I want to do is I want to make it float over. I don't want it to be under like this. I want it to be over, right? So I'm going to do this. User details. First thing to make it float is to position it absolute, right? We're going to give it a width of 800 pixels. I'm going to give it a background of white. We're going to give it a padding 20 pixels with a border of 1 pixel solid and gray. Actually, brown. All right, let's look at that now. What I do with mine? So we have our border. Let's set it to top 0. Okay. Yeah, it's at the top. So let's say top 200 pixels. And that comes it down, right? Left, auto. Nope. margin left. Margin order. Let's see what this does for us. Nope. Well, never mind. Forget about that. Let's do the box shadow. 0, 0, 20 pixels. Time to come together, right? $100 pixel.
Maybe 300.
Yeah, I just made it smaller. Yeah, so maybe 200 on this. Well, you kind of get the idea, right? Like this, if you want this to be on the right, this button here, we can actually also position it absolute. So if we come here to the button, and we say position absolute, right? And then we set the right. In this case, we are calculating the position from the right, right? And we say 20 pixels on top, 20 pixel. All right, there, position that there. See that? So now you can close that. We've essentially created a model, right? Let me do something a little extra cool. The background, I'm gonna do RGB with an alpha channel. I'm gonna make it 255, 255, 255.8. That's 80% opacity. Just for those who are interested, you can see that it's not transparent. And then we can make our divs in here. Div, padding, 10 pixel. Border bottom, 1 pixel, dotted. Yeah. Let's make this 0.9. Let's reduce this padding, the vertical padding to 5 pixel. Remember, padding is vertical, horizontal. The first number, if you have two numbers like this is a shortcut for top and bottom, left and right. Right, so top and bottom will be 5 pixels, left and right will be 10 pixels. Okay. We have something funny going on here. Look at our address. Here's our address. Extra. Okay. And then the last thing I'll just do is to make the labels inline block. Who remembers why we do inline block? Anyone? Nobody. Did I lose everybody?
Yeah. Inline block is so that it doesn't so it doesn't spread through the whole
No, inline block is so that you can size it.
Okay.
If you don't do inline block, you won't be able to set the width on an inline element. You can only set the width of block elements, not of inline elements. So if you want an inline element that you want to adjust the width, you have to make it inline block first, and then you can adjust it. But look at this. This is dynamic HTML, right? Because look at our template. Our template says nothing, right? It doesn't describe this behavior. This behavior is a combination of the component and the template. So this template here is just a template. It displays data based on the data that is set on active user. So we show the information of whoever active user is. So if we come here to whatever this name is, and you click on details, you see that? That's what it's showing. And then,
So the active user in this case is the one that it's clicked, whose details are clicked.
yes, because our click event, so let's decompile, let's break this down, right? Our click button, right? The click event calls this method, show user details, but it passes that method the user parameter, which is whatever user it's currently on, right? Remember, this is a loop. So first iteration of the loop, this is the user. Second iteration is this user. Third iteration. So each time it goes through that loop, it generates a new button because this is a template, right? And for each button, it says that, okay, when this button is clicked, call this method with the user that was used to generate this row. That's what it does.
Sorry, I lost you at the loop. Could you explain the loop again?
So this is a for loop, ng4, right? We have an array of users. This is an array of users.
Yes.
So each is going through the loop from 0 to the length of the loop, right? So each step in the loop, it has a user that's the element at that array position. So that user, it saves it into a user variable, which is what is used to generate these cells. So this is the name on that current user. So for user 1, this is the name, right? But then we're also asking it here to create a button. And when that button is clicked, call this method with that user. So if we come into the component and we look at the method, show user details, all this method does is set the user that's passed in as the active user. This active user, remember this is an assignment. It just sets it as the active user of the component and sets this user details visible is true. This user details visible is just a Boolean. It starts up as false, and we just use it to say whether or not we show that user details panel. That is what this ng if is. This is an if, your good old conditional if. But in an Angular template, this is how you make this template conditional. So this template is, this whole div is conditional on this condition that an active user is set and user visible is true. That's the condition. Which is why when we first load it, that panel doesn't show, right?
Yeah.
But once you click this, this sets show user details to true and sets an active user. And so this condition becomes true and this div shows up. Okay? Does this make sense?
Yes, of course. We'll need to practice and practice and practice to.
You will need to, and if you don't practice, you'll fall behind more. So it's important because I'm going to build off from this knowledge. I'm going to, this is using everything we've done so far. because we've done all of this, we've done the NGA, we've done NG4, right? We've done all of those, we've done the click before. So these are all things we've done. We've done the template expressions, right? We've done all of these previously a couple of times at least, right? So this is it coming together. Like right now, it's like I'm building a real actual app, right? And you can see the functionality is actually there. If I wanted to pimp this up a little and give it an overlay, I would just put a div inside this, right? I'll just wrap everything in a div, actually. And let's do it like this. I have to do my indenting, and this is only going to take a minute. And then we'll end the class. We're already over time, but yeah. And then here, I'm gonna add styles. So this is, all these styles now are going to be on the immediate child div of this. Let's come down to the bottom here. Come on. Here. So let's come here. Let's indent this. Right. All right. So this immediate child div. Now we'll have that. Let's see, let's make sure everything still looks right. If it's right, okay. So what we're going to do now is this div, we're going to say width, position, absolute as well, right? And the width will be 100%, and the height 100%. On the background, to be black. Let's see how that works. See how that looks. Oh, wait. And then we need to set the top 0, left 0. Okay, that's an overlay. All right, so rather than it just being a total blackout, let's make it transparent. So our background, we're going to use RGBA. That's RGB with alpha channel. So we'll do RGBA. Black is 0, 0, 0, and maybe 30%, which is 0.3. And that will give us a nice overlay. Okay, maybe let's make it a little darker. It's more dramatic. 0.6. Even darker. 0.8. Okay, so you probably experienced models and stuff like this, and the thing is, the background is not clickable because that overlay is on it, so you can't click any other button.
Yeah.
Right.
So cool.
And this is how you do it. This is the CSS for doing it, pretty much. So I'm going to commit this and push the code out, and you can tear it apart, but you have to do that. If not, right, like you will fall a little further behind. But this is functionality. This is the kind of stuff that you would build in an app, right? And this is a relatively basic form of it. But look at that. Any name here. Okay. That's it. All right. We're way over time. So Any questions before I stop the recording? Do you want me to quickly run over the different pieces so that when you're looking at it, you get it, or if that's not necessary? Anyway.
I wouldn't mind that, to be honest with you, but I'm mindful of other people's time.
Yeah. Anyone else? Okay, let's just do it then. Just very quickly. Very, 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 very quickly. So we created the component.
We were just no, he said that.
So we created a component and assigned a route to it, right? That's the user's route. The route is defined in the app routing module, right? Which is here. Okay, so we added a path and the component, right? Next thing we did, we created a service, right? And we called it users service. So it is users.service and it's down here. Okay. We imported the HTTP client, which is the Angular service that you use to make HTTP requests essentially. Okay. And so we set this service up. We created a method on it. So remember, we injected it here. We did a direct injection of the service here and saved it as a private property of this service, right? And that's why we call it with this.http, because it's a property, private property of this service. That's what direct injection does. And then we call the get method on it to call this API endpoint, which is this here. I will share the URL for this on Slack so that you all have it. Okay. So, and that's it. The get method. This is a return. Return this. This returns an observable. It's like a promise, but it's different from a promise. But the same concept as a promise is that it handles an asynchronous operation, right? But it gives you back a subscriber or a subscribable, right? It gives you back an observable. Sorry, it gives you back an observable. And when you subscribe to the observable, you get the data that's returned from this get. Okay, so now if we look at the user directory component, right, we have the template, which has the table. The rows are dynamically generated with the ng4. Okay, the ng4 is your loop, it's your for loop in an Angular template. Okay, that generates the rows. We also have this user details div with an ngIf, which is your if conditional, and it's conditional on there being an active user and user details. Now for each row in the ng4 loop, we added a button, right? And the click action of the button calls this method on the component. That's what the component is for. It's to provide intelligence, to provide actions and data to the template. So the click method calls this method on the component. And if you come down to the component, all that method does is set the active user on the component. This is a property of the component, a public property. And when you mouse over, you can see it tells you that. So it sets that public property to whatever user was clicked on. And it sets the user details visible value to true. It defaults to false when the component first loads. So then it sets it to true. And then the close user details does the opposite. It unsets this active user by setting it to null, and it sets that user details visible to false. So it essentially reverses everything that this does. And that makes it hide. And that is all. And then in the ng on init, this method is automatically called when the template is ready, when the template is done compiling, or when the component is ready, actually. So this is the initialization. It's different from the constructor. at the constructor, the component is not necessarily ready. It's not necessarily bound to the template. But in ng on init, it is bound to the template already. So this here is where you add the service call, right? We call the get users method on the service. I'll be subscribed to it, which allows us to get the users off of it. Okay. Depending on our comfort level at the next class, I can talk more about observables because it's an important concept, but it's a little bit, it is very technical. I'm not saying a little bit, it's very technical, but it's important because everything in Angular is built around observables, not promises. Okay, so understanding observables is important, and we'll explore that more in the next class if I feel like we're comfortable. Okay, and this is it. Does this make sense now? Or is that helpful? I mean, you can watch it again and run through that breakdown again. But those are the pieces. And then the styles, of course. We have the
Probably need to go over some of the older Angular lessons that you taught.
Yeah. So
everything makes sense.
Yeah. And then we have the styles here.
Yeah, the styles are really, really straightforward for me. I don't know.
Okay. All right. So that's it. I will stop recording so that we can deal with any after party issues.
All right. Dapper might be in the lobby. He wants to crash the party.
Yeah.